And we're live.
Hi, Jenn.
Hello.
Hello. How are you? We've got a lot of excitement going on behind me. I apologize. Yeah, but it's nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. I love the new background.
Yeah, we're striving for New York City living with multiple people working from home. It's always exciting to navigate it. But hey, we are living the dream.
We are. And it's so interesting. I was talking to a friend the other day, and we were talking about, how easy it would be to just go get a corporate job and make six figures. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, can you imagine though, like how awful that might actually feel when you are used to having the flexibility and opportunities that we currently have.
It's so true. Yeah. It's hard to go back. I mean, there's going to be this weird hybrid I'm reading about, where it's like 3 days at home, 2 days in the office, but I don't know. That's going to feel I don't know if that's going to work, but it's good that at least there's some flexibility that's going to last no matter what after this experience. I hope for people's sake. That's for sure.
It's interesting. My aunt just got notified that she works for a college. She has to go back full time in the office starting June 1st, like everybody does.
What? I was like, oh my goodness, that's pretty strict.
Yeah, huh. I was surprised by that. So I don't know. I don't know what higher education's doing, but apparently that's what her college is doing. So crazy to me.
Well, yeah, I'm happy that's not true. But how's your academy? Is your academy rolling right now?
We are starting on Monday. So we have a new cohort that starts on Monday, which I'm super excited about. I'll declare it here too, as I think I'm going to start my next book with the cohort on Monday. I know. I don't even want to say those words out loud, but here we are.
What's it about?
It's going to be a writing, publishing type of book. I don't really know. Like, I already have it started, but I gave it up sometime last year when I'm like, this isn't a priority. So I will probably regret making this announcement, but I feel like it's swirling me. It's been swirling beneath, and every time it just keeps dragging me in. So I feel like I have to do something finally.
I think you kind of do. And we will be your accountability partners now that you've said it. No escape. No escape. What number book is that for you? Is that number 3, 4, 5?
7, girl, 7.
7. Jeez. Underachiever.
How about you? What's new in your world?
Well, we launched our May 4th cohort of our online DEI Foundations program. So that was awesome. We have a group of maybe 25 learners, which is a wonderful number. And we'll probably do another one in late June. So if anybody's interested in doing a 6-week program, online, mainly asynchronous, meaning you could take it on your own time and download the modules and work through the worksheets. And then there's some synchronous, which means live, in-person, virtual time with your cohort and our facilitator, who's our senior consultant, Kevin England, who's amazing. And so the next one is starting in late June. And if you're interested, just go to Jennifer Brown Consulting and look under courses, and you'll see the Foundations program. And the date is being announced. And it's just going really well. There's so many people that want that foundational knowledge. And who knows, may then build into that next generation of practitioners who do this for a living, because the field is growing, I'm happy to say.
Yeah, and you're a part of the growingness, the growth of the field, which is kind of cool.
I hope so.
Yeah.
That is kind of cool.
Yeah. Well, we have a cool guest who's joining us today, who you and I both know very well. And so I'm going to bring Dina onto our screen. Hey, Dina.
Hey.
Hey, Dina.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Good to have you.
Yeah, I feel like this is a long time in the making. I don't know why it took us this long to have Dina on, but we're here now since I see your face every week. Yeah.
I'm happy to be here. It happens when it's supposed to happen.
That's right.
I would agree. Right. So the three of us all know each other well. And so, but for the sake of those who are watching us, Dina, can you paint a broad brush stroke of what it is that you are doing in the world these days?
So I would say I dabble a little bit in Jenn Brown's world in terms of diversity, equity, inclusion, but from a healthcare standpoint. So as a registered nurse, I work with doctors' offices and healthcare facilities and make sure that they're providing culturally competent care to LGBTQ patients. So I teach the doctors and nurses how to take care of us.
So beautiful. Dina, tell me, I always learn so much from you about how we've been missing as a community from the way caregivers and medical professionals are trained even, and how little education there really is about us, and therefore sort of how we fall out of the system, don't get the right care, have this assumption that the practice of medicine and care is not really looking out for us. But you have some really disturbing information on how that is still prevalent today, and how you then go in and really address that head on, and you're doing just such an important service. And I'm so grateful that you're doing this, because we wouldn't have a voice otherwise.
Yeah, so I think, thank you for that. I think that one of the things that we learn when we go to nursing school or medical school is we learn about patient population health, right? So different minority groups of folks and the things that those patients face, usually at higher rates than their counterparts, right? And so people of privilege, you might say. But it's usually in terms of a risk stratification standpoint. So, a certain group might be more prone to hypertension than another group. And so we learn what we call social determinants of health. Unfortunately, what tends to happen is that the provider's unconscious bias plays into how they deliver that care on a regular basis. So instead of using that knowledge for risk stratification, what are you most at risk for? If I look at all of the pieces of your identity, versus stereotyping somebody. And so, for example, if we look at gay men, we know that they have a higher incidence and poor outcome for prostate cancer, but that's not necessarily because of a sexual orientation, gender identity, or practices, right? That is more because a provider is less likely to test for prostate levels than they are to test for HIV and STD. So that becomes not a patient issue, but a provider issue. And so the providers have the unconscious bias. What happens though is that patients are reluctant to go to providers because we've had experience of discrimination. And so we're less likely to seek that care. In the LGBTQ plus patient population, in medical school, a resident that's in school right now, the national average, if they get any education at all, the national average for education for medical residents is 5 hours. If you're a BSN, bachelor's level nursing student, you might get 2.5 hours if you get anything at all. And so most of that time is spent for folks trying to figure out all of the aspects of the LGBTQIA plus and the alphabet mafia that some people might refer to it as. And so they miss the crux of it, which is what's the clinical relevance? Like, why do you care? So the pieces they don't get are, how do you do a really good patient intake for all of your patients? What are appropriate questions? Or how do you do an organ inventory? Or what is an organ inventory and why do you care? Or when we ask patients about their medications, we might not ask why they take a particular medication, or we might assume that the heteronormative community takes this medication for hypertension or congestive heart failure, but it might be a transgender patient who takes that for hormone therapy. So we create a lot of challenges by not training people appropriately. And so that's what I do, is I help them to learn that piece.
It's so good. And obviously Jen's having internet difficulties, so she'll be back. Right now she's just a phantom. She'll be back.
She's there.
And she'll pick up as if she never left. So what are you doing? So obviously this is what you're like, you go into hospital groups and organizations and kind of shed a light on where they're doing things wrong. How are you getting in front of those people? Do you travel around? Do you speak to small groups, large groups? And obviously I say obviously, I know you have a book, but you can even what does that look like for you? Because I feel like this is a topic that you're so passionate about. How are you just kind of getting your word out?
So I actually do very little advertising other than speaking at colleges and universities, or healthcare associations hire me to come in and speak. And so often I'll do their annual conference, or their training sessions that they offer for staff, whether it's nursing students or medical associations. So I've got a few medical associations across the country that have invited me to speak for them. Other than that, typically it's word of mouth. And so somebody will bring me in, either other consultants or people that I've worked with in the past have made recommendations to their other coworkers or people in their industry. And from the consulting standpoint, what I do is I look at an organization's entire patient flow process. So I look at all of their policies and procedures, and I look at all of their forms that they might use. I talk to their staff and evaluate where they're at from a knowledge base. Are they inclusive in how they're providing care for patients, and where their areas of opportunity are? And then I create a recommendations report essentially for their leadership team to implement short, midterm, and long-term goals. And then I help them implement those changes. Once we do that, then I'll do their training for their staff. So several of my clients have started that process with me, but then they maintain ongoing relationships so that we do their annual training for cultural competency, or their new hire training for their staff, making sure that the staff is clinically trained. So not just being culturally competent, but translating that cultural competence to clinically relevant care. So what's important at the bedside and why, right? It's in healthcare, I love it. I hear, well, I treat every patient the same. Well, that's your first mistake. You should never treat every patient the same. Every patient gets individualized care. So if that's what you're doing, you're missing the boat to begin with, because that's what we're mandated to do as healthcare professionals, is individualized care plans. And I've been a patient myself, and so it's not been pleasant when people have missed really important factors of my care because they haven't had all of the pieces, or they've negated my decision makers because they think that they're entitled to do so because of religious freedom and things like that. So there are areas, even healthcare organizations miss the risk mitigation factors that they should be considering in providing culturally competent care. So I help people to understand that. And I've seen patients have bad outcomes because we made poor judgments at the front end of care. Patients who go to the ER for an infection and they've been negated, and they come back septic and end up in ICU because we didn't do our due diligence on the front end as the provider. Things like that. And so I love being able to advocate for those people. And it's probably my measure of making sure that I get the right care as I age. I want to make sure there's a little self-fulfillment taking care of myself here in this process, because I want to make sure everybody knows how to take care of me when I get older or when I need care. So I'm going to make sure everybody does it right out of the gate.
There's nothing like a self-serving goal.
Why not? Why not? I'm curious. You said, there might be like religious freedom issues or whatever, but I am curious, do you meet with resistance on a values or beliefs basis? And how do you help people? I guess, do you find them having to differentiate between personal beliefs or agree or disagree with, I'm a caregiver and I have a job to do? Like, how do you parse that? Does it come up? Or do you think you don't run into a lot of that? Because look, this is about healthcare. It should be so objective, I guess, theoretically, but I'm sure we're humans, and as such, we're flawed and bring our own baggage.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of, so I think there are people that believe that they are entitled to decide what kind of care they're going to provide or not provide. And I also think that when they work for a larger organization that has to worry about risk mitigation, that, many states are right to work states. So you are entitled to your belief system, and you entered into healthcare to take care of people and receive them where they are. So that would be no different than, can you refuse somebody that's been incarcerated? I mean, I've been a bedside ICU nurse and taken care of incarcerated patients that have been handcuffed to the bed. And if they've coded, they have had every right for me to do appropriate CPR on them and to manage their treatment care for their individualized needs just as much as the next person. So I think that comes down to understanding what somebody's biases are and helping them to explore their own bias and where that might come from, and providing a little bit of education along the way, and it's interesting when you speak to folks who have experienced discrimination, and then when you describe a scenario of discrimination for an LGBTQ plus person, it's interesting to see how that mindset changes and that light bulb goes on, like that aha moment. And I love being able to be in the room. Jen Grace, I came out by your way one time, and I did some training for a group, and to be in that room of people and to be that safe place where they can ask questions and bring their misperceptions and myths to the table and help to undo some of that, and to see that light bulb go on and to know that you're correcting some of that mindset, and providing some different insight it's a huge honor to be able to do that with people and to be safe, like to be that safe space where they can ask you anything is I just think that's the coolest thing ever,
Did you, and I'm not sure, I know how, so I know the end of my question because I know you so well. But the beginning of the question, I don't think I actually know. When you were in like nursing school, for example, did you know that there was something beyond bedside nursing, or did that just kind of like organically occur that you moved from that into a consulting space? Like, I'm just kind of curious, like what your original vision was when you were in nursing school.
So that's, God, you always ask loaded questions. So when I went to nursing school, truthfully, I went to nursing school to be a hospice nurse. And back when I did that, there was, I will always be, I guess, a forever trailblazer. Back when I remember sitting in orientation the first day of nursing school, and we each had to stand up and say, what was our specialty or focus going to be? And I said, I want to be a hospice nurse. And I remember people not knowing what hospice was because I had been a hospice volunteer. And it was before, and I can tell you, sure as I sit here, there was one paragraph in one textbook about hospice and death and dying. So fast forward, that's not our world today, right? Because we think hospice and we think in terms of palliative care, but that was not prevalent back when I was in nursing school at all. And people thought that was horribly depressing, and why would I want to do that? And I was so, God, it's such an honor to be with somebody on that journey and to be in that space, and to become a very intimate stranger almost, right? In somebody's journey in life. And so I got to do that for many years. And had you asked me back then, when I was a new grad and worked my way up to a hospice administrator and then ended up in critical care, I would never have told you that my career would have taken this pathway. I mean, I knew that there were things other than bedside nursing for sure, because I ended up in administration fairly early on in my career. But I don't know that I thought that there would be a consulting portion of nursing for me. And I certainly never thought when I was writing my book, I never once thought that there would be a consulting portion at all. In fact, I think I remember thinking my editor's crazy and on crack. And that's never going to happen. I think I might have said something to that effect, like, no. And that is what happened. And, and I jokingly talk about that because I say, like, I would never have thought that was going to be my life. And, here's what I do. And I love it. And I love it. And I love that people understand it and need it. And I get to do that. Kind of fun.
So cool.
And it's always different.
Mm-hmm. Dina, I'm curious, have you been out in your professional role the whole way through in the same way? Or have there been, I'm sure. So what are some of those twists and turns of your own identity and the place from which you teach and the source of so much of your passion, right? Which is like that I'm trying to fix a system that was harmful to me and is harmful to me. And I would think that that's one of the most powerful places to teach from, because there's a moral authority to it, you know, and a personal piece to, in addition to the knowledge that you're imparting. So what has that been like?
So I'm going to try to get through that comment and response without a tear. So I did not, I practiced as a nurse for a long time, and I was actually doing community education, exactly what I'm doing now, but from a hospice perspective, in a healthcare facility, when my wife, who I happened to know as another nurse, asked me a dreaded question one day at the nurse's station: had I ever thought about being with another woman? And you could have heard a pin drop. And I was really angry with her for asking me. I was like, oh my God, she asked me that in front of everybody. And how did she even know that? So that was actually how we started our relationship. And so I was not always out, and I had to come out as a hospice administrator running a team of staff. And so that was kind of interesting. And we muddled through it, and I had the best team ever. I loved my staff. And I ended up loving my wife. 17 years later, we're still together. So, we did something okay there. And along the way, I have absolutely been a patient, and we have had some not so good outcomes. So I had a surgery in 2007, and my wife was my power of attorney. You'll remember it was before marriage was recognized within the states. And so after my procedure, my daughter was asked to make some decisions for me, and my wife was not only negated, but actually escorted out of the building. When my roommate, her husband was allowed to stay with her overnight, and my wife was not allowed to stay with us. And that was from an organization that received 100% on the HRC's HEI index. So, so I've had that experience. I've had experience after that experience, I had another experience surgically, and that surgeon was phenomenal. And knowing the first experience I had made sure that the second time my wife was absolutely taken care of and tended to, so much that he stayed with her after his portion of the surgery was done to make sure that she was tended to, so that I could do what I had to what I had to face. So that took some pressure off from me. But I also realized too that heteronormative expectations and projections have absolutely impacted care and decision opportunities that were provided. When you think you're receiving informed consent and you're getting all of the opportunities and decisions that lie ahead of you, you're not always necessarily granted all of that information, or you're granted it from a heteronormative perspective of what society expects. So that's, and there's more to come from that. Probably in the fall, I will share a little bit more about that. But
little teaser.
Yeah.
Little teaser. I heard that.
Yeah.
We'll have to do some celebration in the fall when you start unveiling the things that you're all working on. That'll be fun.
Mm-hmm.
First, I have to decide to come out all over again.
Oh, never ends.
So there was the, so it's going to be okay though.
No, it will be. The world is changing.
Yeah.
We have the wind at our backs, I think, in some ways, and not in others, certainly. With all the states and all the anti-trans stuff going on. Mm-hmm. I know every time we feel like it's a step forward, it's things are definitely organized, pushing against. So
it is very apparent that is the situation. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm. For sure. So my hope though is that, I can see that organized movement happening in a direction that makes me not so thrilled. But I also see healthcare organizations wanting and having a desire to be more inclusive. Even healthcare academics, they're wanting to be more inclusive. They don't really know how to include that curriculum in their process. So I do believe that there's a desire. It's just that the faculty that's teaching doesn't necessarily know what to include. And so, I think that those are important things. And there's not even really a practicum experience. So people they don't know how to ask questions in an appropriate way, or how to make that information translate to the care that they're providing. So I think that, there's opportunity that lies ahead. It's how we begin to change it. So hopefully we can finesse some change in that area.
Yeah. I think we're all working on that from our respective corners of the world.
Dina, this has been such a good conversation. I feel like this is the definition of barely scratching the surface.
A big topic.
It is a big topic. And I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share a little bit about what I do. And I love what I get to do, and I feel so appreciative and so grateful for that opportunity. So, and thank you for allowing me to share it.
Of course. So, Dina, I had the joy of interviewing you for season 1 of the Invisible Stories podcast. And Jenn, you and I also did. I think you were also season 1. So if anyone wants to hear more about that journey, they can certainly go, listen to wherever they listen to a podcast. But Dina, how else can people get in touch with you?
So you can reach me through my website. It's dinaproto.com, DINAPROTO.com. You can see all of what I do and why is there. And you can also reach out to me via email at dina@dinaproto.com.
Beautiful. Keep it nice and easy.
Thank you.
Nice and easy.
Keep up the good work.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you.
Jen, you and I are back on Friday next week in the afternoon to chat with another person. So I will see you then.
Yeah, sounds good, Jen. All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.